In this lecture, you will learn about cross-site request forgery and also how you can protect your application against this kind of attack. Cross-site request forgery is a deadly attack that occurs when a malicious program, which may be a website, an email application, or a messenger, causes a user's web browser to perform an unwanted operation in a site where the user is currently logged in. Basically, the idea is when a user has been authenticated into a website, he or she is accountable for every single action performed from his or her browser. This is because the system will assume that all the requests related to the user session is coming directly from the user. You can begin to understand how deadly this attack is. So some of the common effects of this can be transfer of funds from one bank account to another without the user's consent. It can be change of password. It can be deleting of the user's account, posting nude content on behalf of a user, or even purchasing an item on behalf of another person. And the list goes on and on. A common scenario these days that we see is where people post content on behalf of another person on Facebook, for example. So this is something that as a developer you should actually take into consideration when building application. And in most cases, this attack takes place when a request is submitted. When a user wants to perform a specific action when they are logged into the system, which means they already have a session, then the malicious program or an attacker then takes advantage of this to embed a code that performs an action which the user does not intend. So, in order to ensure that the right user is the one performing an action on their account rather than a third party, we need to perform 3 basic steps. The first thing that we need to do is to ensure that for each request, we generate a unique token. Next, we need to store the token in the user section, and then finally for every request that the user makes, we are going to send along this token with the request in order to be sure that this request is coming from that specific section and not from an external application. So basically the token is just a random string that we are going to generate, okay, using some PHP inbuilt functions, and you're going to see how simple it is to implement. So let's get into the code. I'll show you how to implement this in code. First thing, we need to go over to utilities.php, and we are going to just create a simple function to do this for us. Alright, so here we're going to create a function that generates a token for us. So this token is going to be stored in the session of the currently logged in user. Alright, so I'm going to say function, just name this underscore token. And here I'm going to create a variable random token. This is going to be equal to base64 encode. And then we're going to use another inbuilt PHP function, which is called open SSL random underscore sudo underscore bytes to generate a random token. So we're going to pass in the number of bytes. We can pass in 16 bytes, or we can make it even stronger by passing in 32 bytes. Alright, so this is going to generate a random token for us. There are different ways that we can actually do this, but using the OpenSSL underscore random underscore sudo underscore byte is a more secured way to do this. And we are using the base64 encode function here to ensure that the token that is generated by this OpenSSL underscore random underscore sudo underscore byte does not break our application. So another way that we can actually do this, random token equals to, we can also use the MD5 function, which I don't recommend. I see a lot of people using this. Even if you attempt to do random string generation using the unique ID which provided by PHP, and then you also use the rand function, okay, and set this to true. Alright, so this is also going to give us a random string. So it's going to be a unique string. Each time that this function is called, it generates a random token for us. So just quickly go ahead and show you the string that will be generated. So let's just echo this out. Echo, we're just going to concatenate this with a string. Open SSL, and this will be MD5. Alright, we're just going to call this function in index. So we're going to open index.php. And right here, we're just going to call that function, open a PHP tag, and then here's a underscore token. All right, I'll refresh the browser. Okay, you can see the string that is being generated. One is open SSL. Let's put a line break there. And then we do a refresh again on the browser. All right, so the first line here is generated by the OpenSSL underscore random underscore sudo underscore byte, and while the second one is generated by the MD5, which is wrapped within the unique PHP ID function and also the run function to generate a random number each time it is called. Most people use this on the web, but generally, if you look into some security research that's been done, it is better use the open SSL underscore random underscore sudo underscore byte, which is much more secured. All right, let's go over again to test editor and continue. So I'm just going to comment this out, and then we're going to take this out. And then in index, we're going to just get rid of this. Okay, so we are generating the random token here. The next thing that we need to do is to store it in the user section. So we're going to say session, and the section name could be anything, but here we just use token, should be equal to random token. And then lastly, we can just return it. Okay, so this is all we need to do for this function to generate the token. So what we now need to do is whenever the user sends a request, we want this token to be sent along as an hidden input. So the first place where we need to implement this will be in the login form. We'll go over to our login form now. And right here in the form, before the submit button, I'm just going to add an input feed. So we say input, the type will be hidden. The name should be token. It could be anything. And then the value is going to be equal to what we are returning from the function which generates a unique token for us. So we're going to open a PHP tag here. And then here we're just going to echo whatever is returned from that function. So the function is underscore token. Okay, so right now we're going to refresh the browser on that form. Go to our login page. So right now, if we view the source of this page, this is the random string that is being generated. So each time that this page is refreshed, this string is going to be different. So refresh it to see that we have a different string here. So for each request that we're sending, we are going to be sending a unique token along with the request. And also we are storing this token in a section variable, which means that we'll be able to check to ensure that this token is actually originating from the browser of the logged in user. Our next step now will be to check if when the user clicks on the sign in button here, we have this token sent along. So let's go over to past login page. And right here at the top, we are going to be checking if there is a post of token. So just put a comma here and say, I want to check also for post of token. So if the user is sending a token, what we then need to do is to validate the token. And that means we need to write another function. So we go over to utilities.php. And then we're going to write a second function that we just validate the token that is being sent through the request. And this is going to be a simple function because we're just going to check if the token that is sent through the form is equal to the token that was stored in the session. That means this is a valid request. Then we can then allow the user to continue with the request operation. Otherwise, we are then going to alert that this is an invalid request. So again, it's a function. Just call this validate underscore token. And this function is going to take one argument, which is going to be the request token. This is the token that we're sending through the form. So in this function, the first thing that we are going to do is to check, do we even have a session of token? So obviously, if this doesn't exist, it means that the request is coming from another website. Because we are creating this session token when the user wants to do a request. So if we don't have this session token, it means that the request is coming from an outside application. So we're going to say if it says session token and the session token is equal to the request token. So we're going to say the request token, which is passed in here, is equal to section token. If this is true, then we are going to unset the token and then we return true so that the user can continue the operation. Otherwise, by default in this function, we just return false. if this fails, we fall back to our false value. The function returns a false. Whereas if this succeeds, the function returns a true value. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do now is to go over to our past login file. And right here, we are now going to check if this token, which is sent through the post request, is actually a valid token. So we're going to use that function to check. So we're going to say if valid token, what we want to pass in now should be post of token. All right, so here we're saying if the token which is being sent through the form is valid, we want to process the form. Otherwise, we're just going to throw an error message. So what we now need to do is to actually take all of this, all what we're doing here until the end and wrap it within that if. So because we only want to do all this operation if we have a valid token. We just put it here. All this operation would be performed if the token is valid. But if the token is not valid, we want to display an error message here. So we say result be equal to, just open a script. All right, so here we're going to call the swag function from the suite alert. We pass in the first argument should be an error. And then the next one will be the message. We just say this request originates from an unknown source. And then we just say possible attack. And then the last argument, we just say error. Okay, end this string here also. All right, so let's run this on the browser and see if everything still works the same. Okay, I'll reload the form and then try to submit. You can see that the form still works the way it's intended. So I will try to do a login. All right, so I get an invalid password. I guess I cannot remember the password right now. But we can see that the form is still working the way it's supposed to work because the request token is actually valid. So what we now need to do is to create a scenario where we pass in an invalid token so that we can see how the system behaves. I'll go over again to the test editor. And right here where we are validating the token, I'm just going to remove this and then put a string. So we go over to the browser again and then try to do the request. You see here, this request originates from an unknown source, possible attack. So you say that it is not allowing us to submit the form right now because the token is not valid when compared to what we stored in this section. So if we revert this back and then try to reload the page, here you see that our form works exactly as we expect it to. If I try again now to log in, see if I can remember the password. All right, so now we are able to log into the system. So what we now need to do is to actually implement this in all the places where the user is sending a request in the system. So we've successfully done this for the login script. Let's now go over to the sign up script and then implement this. All right, signup.php. Let's just take this line of code. And then right here in sign in before the button, just going to paste it. Okay, like the previous one. The next thing we need to do now is go to pass sign up. And in pass sign up, we are going to check for that token. So we're going to check for post of token to see if the token is sent along with the request. So if the token is sent along with the request, we do the same thing. We want to validate the token. Say validate token, and then we pass in the post token. So basically do the same thing, process the form, and then in the S part, we display the error message. All right, so we're going to grab all of this and then bring it here. And let's just get that error string from the pass login page. Then we paste it here also. All right, so here we check if the token is valid. If yes, we do all the requests, otherwise we display this error message. Next, we're going to implement this in the edit profile page where the user is making changes to their account. We want to send that input value again. Just duplicate this. This should be token, and here should be calling our token function. So what we can actually do here to just make this more safe, we can check to see if the function actually exists. So we're going to say if function exists, and then we pass in the name of the function as an argument. So the function name is underscore token. So only when this function exists, then we are going to echo it. So this way we don't get an error message if anything goes wrong. So we just copy this and replace it in the other pages. Then we're going to do the same thing for the sign up. All right, first I will see if the form is still working as intended. All right, so it's still working as intended. So for the pass profile, we go over to pass profile now and then implement the code. So basically do the same thing. Here we are checking if the update button is being clicked. We can also check if there's a post request with the key token, right? If this is there, we want to ensure that it is valid. So basically do the same thing, process the form. Yes, display error. All right, now we're just going to grab all of these, put it within the if block. Copy this. Should probably just grab it into a snippet file. It'll be easy to just copy and paste. Okay, so this is for update profile button. All right, let me just double check in the edit profile. All right, so we have this here. Okay, so the last one that I'm going to check right now is the forgot password and password recovery link files. So first of all, we're just going to go to the forgot password. So we want to put the hidden field here, should be token. And here we're just going to check if that function exists. Function name is underscore token. And then we just want to echo underscore token. Okay, next we go to the password recovery link file. Then I'm just going to paste this here. So we now go to password reset. And here we're just going to add it to both of them. This is one for password recovery button. All right, so let's start from the very top. So we're going to check here if that token is sent along. All right, so if the token is sent, we want to check if it is valid. If it is valid, we're going to process the form. Otherwise, we're going to display an error message. So we're going to grab it from here. Okay, so come here, do the same check. Okay, so we just grab all of these and then paste it here. And then we paste the error message here. Okay, so that's pretty much all we need to do. We're just going to now try to see if all our forms are still working correctly. All right, so this is working correctly. It's working correctly, and then our login form is working correctly. This is how you protect your system against cross-site request forgery by ensuring that for every request that is made, there is a unique token.